Welcome, everybody. If you're joining me for the first time here, my name is Keith Miller, and we'll be getting started in a few moments with mindfulness for all learners. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while now, and I couldn't think of a better week to do this than this week, and particularly this month. This has been a hard year for so many of us, and I'm really grateful to be able to do this with you here and to have the ability and the time and the space to open up with each other and to find a place to settle ourselves. This is aligning the mind to open the heart, and glad you can join me here. I am the host of the Soul of Life podcast, where I try to bring psychology to life in science, athletics, arts, and culture and spirituality, all those places where I think psychology and the wisdom of healing can intersect and come to life. And I'm also a social worker. I've been a healer my entire life, and in my career in private practice for 20 years, specializing in marriage and relationships. And that's where I learned IFS, and that's where I'm going to be teaching from, this meditation practice that we'll do together each week, each Friday at noon Eastern time here. IFS is called Internal Family Systems Therapy. Sometimes it goes by self-leadership. That's kind of a more functional term for what IFS is. And, it has nothing to do with our family. Sometimes people think about it as family therapy. It's kind of a weird name in that regard. It's more about the way our parts of our psyche interact as a family. And I'm going to talk briefly about that here for a moment. And each week, when we get together here on the Soul of Life channel on either Facebook or YouTube, I'll be teaching one concept, one IFS concept to hopefully deepen your existing practice of reflection or prayer, or create a new one. That's what I'm hopeful that many of you are here to do. So the format today is going to be 10 minutes of me just doing a short overview of a concept. Then we'll do a 15-minute guided meditation. I call that an Orchestra Conductor meditation, and I'll explain why in a little bit. That'll be clear. And then a 5-minute Q&A that's going to be on the Facebook chat. So you can write questions. You can write questions now. You can say hello. I encourage you to let me know that you're here on the chat. You can pop in and I'll be able to see that at the end. If you have questions, we'll spend 5 minutes, or however much time I have. And, unlike typical meditation, which I think can be helpful for so many of us, that if you've ever done it, it helpfully pivots around triggering the body's relaxation response, the parasympathetic nervous system, to sort of detach and surrender, maybe let go. A lot of the prompts in meditation are about letting go, or a non-attachment activity. And in this IFS-informed meditation, I'll be teaching you how to be actually active and engaged with the parts of your psyche. And that can bring a unique way of being curious and courageous, sometimes things we don't associate with being too relaxed. You can actually be courageous and interactive and engaged with your parts. And when we do that through some of the methods I'll be teaching, it's possible to begin to feel calmer, to feel like your legs, your feet are underneath you again. And you don't have to detach. You don't have to let go of all things. Sometimes life, the clarity that comes from this work is because of our full attention to our parts. And what I loved about doing this in a group setting, and I think we'll really take advantage of this, because I'm seeing 17 people are with us here, and that number is kind of growing each time. I'm so grateful for you to be here. When we do this as a group, I think it unlocks something important for us. We're meant to be together. We're social creatures. So it can be hard for us to do a very private type of meditation all the time. If you find yourself stuck in anxious or negative thoughts, you just want to feel more calm, this is for you. So I'm glad you're here. If you feel hijacked, like I know I have, by just turning the news on for a second, you just want your life, but you want to be yourself. You want maybe access to a full range of emotions, not just the emotions we feel when we watch the news. This is for you. If you've ever tried meditation before, Maybe you just don't think it works for you. You've gotten stuck with it, or you're frustrated with it, or think it's silly. I kind of think it's silly too. I'll just admit I have those parts. And I was actually a very skeptical learner of both meditation and IFS. So that is completely welcome. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you already benefit from a sitting practice or yoga practice or something that involves mindfulness. Thankfully, it's showing up in so many places where learning happens, because mindfulness really is about learning. It's paying attention to the present moment on purpose and staying present, having an open mind, having a beginner's mind, sometimes we say. Maybe you want a spiritual practice, but you're skeptical of spiritualizing or skeptical about religious teaching. This is for you also. Or maybe you have a deep faith and you want a way to apply that without as many constraints. You want to use that faith more practically. Well, this is going to help you too, I think. I want to introduce a brief thought about what the orchestra conductor is. IFS is based on this idea of natural multiplicity. Now, what does that mean? And I'll refer you to the podcast I did with Dr. Dick Schwartz, one of my teachers and where I learned IFS, the founder of IFS. To explain it more, there's lots of places to learn, IFS. But very briefly, it's about natural multiplicity. We all have parts. Our psyche is not unitary. And that should come as no surprise. Just throughout the course of the day, you're probably flowing through different parts of you. Your persona, if you will, your personality has these facets. Just like if somebody walks into a room and you have a reaction, you either light up and you're interested, or maybe it's a dark cloud comes over you. That's what parts are. They're states of mind. So it can be explained neurobiologically. Parts are simply mind-body states. But how they interact with each other, it gets kind of interesting. That's where Dick Schwartz in this model, IFS, really shines. That our parts tend to behave like a family. And sometimes that family has factions, divisions, and it's political sometimes. Some parts feel better than other parts. So we'll get into that other time. But the main idea with IFS, and the main thing I want to teach today, is that all parts are welcome. There are no bad parts. We use mindfulness to explore our parts. So it's sort of an appreciative inquiry. It's not as if we're trying to find these, troublesome parts that are responsible for the problems in our life and then overcome them or get rid of them. And a lot of the language in helping and healing professions does use that language. People tend to come to me and my colleagues in counseling and say, I need help getting rid of this anger. I need help with this addiction to drugs or sex or something, and I need to get rid of it. It's causing problems. So in IFS, we kind of think of it like, well, our mind and our body they're like notes on a keyboard. You can't get rid of any of the notes because there's a lot of therapies that try to do that, and it doesn't always go well. It takes a lot of work to suppress the things that are happening naturally. So, like instruments in an orchestra, when there's dissonance or when there's something out of time or out of tune, we don't fire or punish the orchestra members. Hopefully, we work with one part at a time. We say, let's separate this section from this section because you're trying to do it together. It's not quite working. Let's focus on your part, and you focus on this part. And then when you really have an integrity and sort of you really know your stuff and know that part, then you can get together and kind of work with other parts. So all the notes belong there. There's no bad emotions. There's no bad feelings, no bad thoughts. And when we adopt that sort of strategy, it sort of brings a relaxing tone already. It sets the tone because how we focus on our parts changes our experience of you. Your experience of who you are really is often the result of how these parts of you are getting along or not getting along together. So over time, as we meet and as I talk about this in practice, some of those ideas will hopefully become more clear. As we begin doing this work, usually when we identify our parts and get to know them with curiosity and compassion, typically we start to feel more calm. We start to feel more confident. We start to relate to others better. And that's a wonderful side benefit. We start to see the behavior of other people that may drive us crazy suddenly makes more sense and is not so crazy. It's actually, it's driven by something that is, people are responding. Our parts respond to pain, by the way. And that's one of the things that we're often talking about is our parts are formed in reaction to or to protect us from psychological or physical pain. So a lot of the activity of our mind is formed to keep us out of pain, prevent us from being in pain, or if we're already in pain, it's to help us get out of the pain. And there's different words we use for that in IFS. Managers prevent pain, and firefighters, well, the pain's already there. They've got to just do anything that it takes to put it out. So that's like the riot squad. We just go in there and clear it out. Those are addictions. That's anger. That's rage. Managers they tend to get credit for doing good things. They tend to be compulsions, keeping a clean house, planning, organizing, all those things to prevent problems. So I'm going to sort of turn our attention now. I want to use the next 15 minutes to focus on the exercise for the day that we'll do. And then we'll wrap up with questions. So I'm going to start the meditation by saying that find a place where you're comfortable. That should be obvious, but it doesn't have to be lying down. It doesn't have to be sitting a certain way. It can be lying down. And you can be standing. Sometimes if you're sleepy, doing the meditation, a relaxing meditation is not the thing to do. You might actually want to keep your energy in your body. So find a place that's comforting for you. I'm going to begin to ask you to focus first on the room that you're in. And we're going to begin to work our way from the outside to the inside. And by focusing, I mean simply this. Bring your attention to a place on the wall in front of you. You don't have to close your eyes. And simply focus on that spot. Maybe kind of a soft focus. Your vision may blur a little bit. There's no effort involved, you may notice, to bring your attention to that place on the wall. And now I want you to shift your focus from that spot on the wall in front of you to a spot on the wall behind you without getting up to move. Just pulling and shifting your attention, imagining a place on the wall behind you in your mind. And finally, resting your attention in the center of the room. And noticing there's no effort required to do this. Wherever you ask your attention to go, it goes. So you are the conductor, you are the executive, if you will, of this beam of attention. You may imagine it like a beam of light. It can narrow to something that you want it to stay on. So from the center of the room, I'm going to begin to broaden where you're putting your attention, ask you to broaden where you're putting your attention. Simply noticing the sounds in the room, where you are, the sound of my voice. Without trying to do anything to change it, there's no response that's necessary for you. Just noticing the sounds that are coming in to your ears for a moment. Maybe allowing your breath to slow and deepen. Hearing the sounds. Letting them pass through your attention, almost like a wave. Something gets your attention, you notice it, and then you let it go and notice what else is there. What other sounds am I hearing? And now, if you're comfortable, you may begin to close your eyes. Maybe you've done that already. And noticing the light that is around you, the light that even passes through your eyelids that may turn a reddish pink from the blood flowing through your eyelids. Noticing the quality of that light. Very simply breathing in and breathing out. Allowing your breath to be natural here. As we go through a few places of focus, you may begin to notice more sensations in your body. And just giving permission to what's happening and what's unfolding in your body and around you. Now you may begin to notice something you don't normally notice unless you need to, your sense of smell. On your breath in, notice, if you're able to breathe through your nose, notice all the sensation of your smell. One of our oldest, the oldest of our sensations, the most primitive, the quickest to respond. And with appreciation, noticing there's no good or bad smells at this moment. It's just, wow, this ability I have is amazing. It's always there. And now noticing the sense of touch, sensations of your skin. Just opening to what sensations your skin may be letting in to you right now. Our body, our skin especially, is like a giant sensory antenna. Most of the time, we're tuning out all of that sensory information to focus and do something and go somewhere. And with your skin, there is so much potential for pleasure, for soothing sensations. So you may begin to notice, if you rub your two fingers together or your hands together, notice temperature, notice softness, roughness, smoothness, hardness, the sensations of your clothes, your shoes, the furniture or floor, pressure. And as we go through and focusing on these parts of your body, the sensations, we know that the brain is responding. It may seem as though nothing is happening. There's no purpose to our focus. We're just going through and noticing. Like an antenna, you're receiving information. You're not sending or reacting to it. But in the brain, it's very, very soothing as we do this. And as you lower your breathing, slow your breathing, breathing from your belly, maybe putting a hand on your belly button, allowing your belly to rise as you breathe in and lower as you breathe out. Getting that breath deep into your lungs. Imagining that you may breathe in everything that you need as a white mist. And as you breathe out, everything you don't need comes out like a gray mist. And just allowing your breath for a few cycles, paying attention to it, letting your breath breathe you. And on your next in-breath, you may inhale and imagine that breath is being distributed to all the places in your body that it needs to go without any effort. Your body knows how to do this. And as you breathe out, everything you don't need is passing from your cells out to the outside and going back into the atmosphere, back to the earth, where it can be used. And in your breath in, you're breathing back everything that you need. And on the next breath, staying inside, noticing what are the other sensations in my body. Maybe you've begun to notice them already. Maybe there's distracting thoughts. So pay attention to what you notice naturally on your own, internally, and giving permission to what's there. There's no need to push away distracted thoughts. You may, like a person knocking on your door, you may look them in the eye and ask them, "What can I do for you?" And if there's no purpose, then you may close the door and ask them to come back later. A lot of our parts, when we begin to get quiet and slow down the mind, a lot of our parts are protective and wondering if everything's okay. They just kind of peek like little kids. What's going on in there? Why is it so quiet? They just interrupt. It's okay. That's what those parts are supposed to do. So you may just simply appreciate them, acknowledge them, treat them with respect, those distracting thoughts, and ask them to step aside and come back later. And you bring your attention back to the inside, back to the sensations you may begin to notice as there's stillness. Any places where there is discomfort, as I shift my body and notice, attend to it. There's no need to do anything right. There's no right way. You may move in certain ways that feel right to you. Balance your body. Take care of your body. Where there is discomfort, focus on it. Give it attention, compassion. And then come back to noticing what else arises. Our mental activities, thoughts, feelings, are also sensory. We don't often think of them that way, but they respond directly to sensory prompts. And the state of our body affects the state of our mind. So as your heart rate is slowing, your breathing is slowing, often our thoughts begin to slow. Just like if you're moving fast on a train, that everything's going by you at a blur. And when you slow down, you begin to see the richness of the landscape. A little fly that's on the window. The slightest little thing you begin to notice comes to life as we slow down. And so as we begin to wind up our meditation time, just taking stock of what has arisen for you during this time, maybe different thoughts, worries, or feelings were emerging. And in this practice, you may simply have a relationship with those parts and come back to them another time, focus on them another time. You can separate from those parts. You are more than any one of these sensations or any one of these feelings. You have a bigger you that we call self. And so trusting that we have this self is sometimes for us not a new thing. Some of us have experienced this before. And if we're lucky, we've been around others who have that sense of self, and they've given us the eyes to see it. But nobody lacks this sense of self. It's always there. The same way that we begun our practice today by focusing on one spot on the wall in front of you, behind you, and in the center. Yourself, the center of you, is always there. Sometimes we have to work through the parts that are orbiting and pay attention to them, and they slow down. We begin to feel that self. So just notice, as we close here, notice where you are. And that's not a literal, logical question. Where are you in your focus? So I'll end our time here by inviting people to chime in on the chat And I don't think I'm seeing any questions yet emerge. I'm happy to answer questions that anyone has about IFS, about what your experience was like. Certainly, there's no requirement to chat, or it's perfectly fine to just be observing this. And I'll be here next week. One thing that you can do, I want to encourage you to do before you leave, is either like the page or subscribe to the Soul of Life podcast on YouTube so that you get the reminders for this every week. And also, of course, the shows that come out where I'll be talking about different aspects of psychology, spirituality, and how we can begin to be ourselves more where the world needs us most. And so hopefully this practice that we have together here on Fridays, every Friday at noon, will be a practical way for us to engage in some of the things that I'm talking about on the Soul of Life podcast. So, as we're ending, and maybe some prompts for questions, I might ask you what you noticed during the meditation. Were you able to stay in your body, focused on the prompts, or were you somewhere else? A lot of times meditation teaches us to sort of float away or detach. And this was sort of a more grounding meditation. Some of us don't need any more help floating away. We do that just fine. We need help grounding. So this would have probably helped for that, help you get here. You're welcome, David. Thank you very much. Thanks for stopping in. Other times we need help being a little lighter. And sometimes there's meditations that we'll do that will help us. If we're a driven person, we're pushing, we're on the ground all the time, we're practical. We need help actually getting more creative, more inspired, more imaginative. And so there'll be ways that we can do that in some of our work together. There's no one size fits all with this kind of meditation. And as you learn some of the principles of IFS, I think you'll find that it can open up a window into exploring more of who you are, remembering who you are. A lot of times memories begin to emerge. And for some of us, it's uncomfortable, or just, sort of we can't feel, we feel more intensity of emotion when we sit down. Somebody's saying that they felt fears in their, and they felt those fears in their shoulders. That makes sense. Sometimes it's very specific. A lot of people feel it in the gut. Sometimes we'll feel a tension or a squeezing here. That's not a mistake. When we're stressed out, usually we don't have words because our body's getting ready to do something to protect us. Someone saying in the chat that they felt anxiety when they first started the meditation. And I would be curious how you noticed that anxiety over time, over the moments we were together. Betsy's saying, thank you. It's an interesting approach. And the question, will this be recorded? Yes. This stays on the Facebook page recorded. And so this can be viewed anytime. And as I do them each week, you'll be able to see them. So again, just a reminder to subscribe or subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching there, or if you want to get the Soul of Life podcast that comes out on YouTube every Friday. If you want to get the reminders for this meditation, like the Facebook page here, and you can like this or comment here and like this particular post. This video session will be a post on the page. And lastly, before we end here in a minute, just want to invite you to share this with others. My vision for this is that it can be one of the few places in the world, maybe in your life ever, where you can come together with other people who want to move in the same direction of finding their center, finding their core. So it can be sort of as we do this together, a spiritual home for some of you. And of course you have other practices, but to me, I love IFS and I love teaching this. So I think it is a unique way to do it. Someone saying it went a long way to acknowledge the anxiety once they felt that. That makes a lot of sense. And Steve is saying the discussion of parts really resonates. Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for being here. We're going to end our time now, and send your questions on Facebook. I'll be interacting there, and I'll be watching that. So I'll be happy to hear from you anytime there. Take care.